Hey everyone, Life with Pets here. So today I'm going to talk about ick and how we treated it in our tank. So before I start, I just want to say that there are many medications and different ways of treating ick. So in this video, I'm just going to show you what we did and what worked for us. I'm going to take you through the process step by step of what we did and what medication that we used, and then the outcome of the whole process. So very briefly, what is ick? Ick is a parasite and it is also known as white spot. The reason for that is that it looks like little grains of salt on your fish. So I think you can see it here on the clown loach, particularly on the tail. You can see that there's like little white spots and they do look like little grains of salt. It burrows under the skin of the fish and then it feeds off the dead cells that it creates. At that point, it's known as a trophant, and then once the trophant is mature enough, then it will leave the fish, it will detach from the fish, and it will sink to the bottom of the tank, and it will attach, and that's whether on substrate or a plant or a decoration. At this point, it becomes a tomont and produces tomites. It will eventually burst open, and the tomites will then become free swimming in the water. This is when the process will then begin all over again. Now the entire life cycle does depend greatly on the temperature, and so if you can raise the temperature, then that will speed up the life cycle. It is important as soon as you see ick in the tank to start treating it, because it is something that spreads very, very quickly, and if not treated, it will kill your fish. The medication won't kill it when it's on the fish or when it's in the substrate. It will only kill it when it is actually in the free swimming stage. So it is very important to catch it early and to make sure that you do follow the directions on any medication that you're going to use. We've only ever had ick a few times, and on those occasions we've always used the heat treatment to take care of it, and that's been very successful. But unfortunately, when you have live plants, that can be an issue, and when we tried turning the temperature up to what we needed, we found that the plants started melting back considerably, and so we decided this time that we would go ahead and use medication. So the medication we used this time was Rid Ich. When we were doing our search for it, we wanted something that wouldn't be too hard on the plants, but would also obviously quickly take care of it for the fish, because the fish do get very, very irritated. This treatment was really, really easy to do. Before we started it, we needed to do a 25% water change, and then it was just 1 teaspoon per 10 gallons. Now, the first dose, I actually did do the full dose. Well, in fact, our tank is a 75 gallon, and so I just did 7 teaspoons, which was treating 70 gallons. If you have any carbon in your filter, you must make sure that you remove that, because otherwise it will then just take the medication back out of the tank. So make sure that you actually do that if there is carbon in there. One thing with this medication is it can turn decorations blue. So I took out ones that I was concerned that were very light in colour and I didn't want them to get a blue cast. I did take those out. Also, there have been reports that if you have clear silicone, it can actually stain that blue as well. Thankfully, ours was black, so it wasn't an issue for us. While I was adding the medication, I did turn the flow up on the filter. We have an AquaClear filter and you can adjust the flow rate, and so I turned it to a faster flow rate so that it would move the medication around the tank quicker. Once it had done that, I then just switched it back to the flow rate that we normally have it at. We also turned up the temperature to 82 degrees to help speed up the process, and then all we did was every day we did a 25% water change, and then we added the medication back in. I did find after I think it was the second dose, that our clown loaches and our corys weren't coping with it too well. All the other fish were fine, but those two were struggling, and so we took the dose back to treating for 50 gallons, and at that point everything was okay. The directions say that you treat for 3 to 4 days after you see no spots on the fish. So I had to keep checking the fish very, very carefully, and then once I didn't see any spots on any of them, I did treat for another 4 days. And my biggest fear with it was that we would lose the cycle in the tank. A lot of the medications, it does say it doesn't disrupt the cycle, but in a lot of the research that I did, people were saying that they did lose their nitrogen cycle. I was a bit concerned about that because this tank has only been up and running for a little over a month, but thankfully by the time everything was done, we were all okay. Once we were sure the tank was clear of ick, we then set about removing the medication from the tank. And the way that you do that is by adding the carbon back into your filter. So we don't typically use carbon in our filters, but I do always keep some on hand that we can then add into a filter if we need to. So this is the one that we use. I will leave links to the Rid Ich and this carbon in the description box below. I was able just to cut a piece up and add it into the filter. That is one of the great things I do love about the AquaClear filters, because you can basically put whatever media you want in them. If you've got a filter that has a cartridge, very often there is carbon added to that cartridge. Therefore, it's actually quite difficult to treat a tank with medication if you have a filter with a cartridge, because there's carbon in it. So that is one of the great things I do love about the AquaClear, because you can basically build a filter the way you want it with what you choose to put in it. So in ours now, we have the sponge in the bottom. I've then done the layer of carbon. We then have the polyfill and then the biomedia on top. I will leave the carbon in for about a week or so, and then after that time I will take it out, and then I'll also change out the polyfill, because as you saw it was quite dirty, but I don't want to risk taking it out at this point simply because the tank has gone through a lot, and I want to be sure that I don't disrupt the cycle. 2 days after the final water change, I went ahead and did a water test of our ammonia, nitrite and nitrate, just to see what had happened with the tank, because like I say, I was very concerned about it. However, thankfully everything was okay. There was no ammonia, no nitrite, and about 10 parts per million nitrate. So everything was absolutely spot on. We use the API Freshwater Master Kit to do our water testing, and we have found that to be very reliable. It is important for you to know where your water parameters are, especially if you have sick fish or you think that something has gone wrong in your tank. This way you can be sure that the water is not the issue. In case you're wondering where we got the test tube holder from, we actually make these. If you're interested in one with either a betta fish or a custom design on, then just send me an email. The link is in the description box below, or you can visit our website where there are a lot more details on them. The plants didn't really like the medication at all. In some cases they did start to die off. I did find that the leaves became very, very thin, and even the new growth sort of had like a brown cast to it, like it wasn't doing very well. However, it was only for a week or so, and once we'd done over that length of time and the tank was then free of the medication, then the plants have bounced back very quickly, which I'm actually very relieved about, because obviously we have a lot of plants in this tank and we're wanting to grow them out quicker. So to have something that was then causing them to die back was not very good for us. But at the end of the day, the medication did do its job. I would highly recommend it. It didn't have any bad effects on the fish other than for the corys and the clown loach, where we had to use the lesser dose. However, it did work for all the fish at the lesser dose. So I think that that is a good thing, that we didn't have to use it at full strength, and yet it still did take care of the problem. We did catch the ick very early on with our fish, And so with this treatment, you may have to treat for longer depending on the severity of the fish. So everyone's situation is going to be different. For us, we did only have to treat for a very short period of time. However, like I say, if you find that your fish is much more infected than maybe just 2 or 3 spots, then it may take longer to clear up. Let me know in the comments box below which ick medications have worked for you. I do think it's always good to know what medications have worked for people and what medications haven't done so well. So leave that information in the comments box below. As always, I will leave links in the description box below to the items mentioned and also where we got everything in this setup. I get asked so many questions on the setups of the tank that I have started leaving everything in the description box. Okay guys, thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.